I was given that.
Is that Olympic Committee or Audi? I can't see. Yeah,
I'm trying to encourage you to get back here.
I had to buy it.
Yeah, I'm going more than
Okay.
Boxer.
In fact, he called me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not taking reservations, I'm just taking.
Let's do this right.
I didn't got the
There's a lot, guys. I believe what you said there.
That on
Unitarians.
I got all the
I'm not a.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fellow Sertomans, may we greet you, and to our guests a warm welcome to. Once each week we like to meet, so one another we may greet. Sertoma stands for servants to man, helping each other wherever we can. S-E-R-T-O-M-A. Sertoma is here to stay. Rah, rah, rah. Royster, royster.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got carried.
Everybody can find a seat.
We have improved to mediocre.
Yes.
I'll give you one up on it. Just wait till I learn the word.
Then
we will be mediocre minus.
I don't even want to get
Gentlemen, all right. Doc, would you please say grace for us this morning?
Grace,
Thank you.
That's the Navy way right there. Never forgot it.
bless us, O Lord, for the food we are about to receive. Bless this unit. May it work for peace and for the benefit of all our folks here in town. Bless our men and women who are in harm's way. Bring them back home safely. And in your name we ask, amen.
Amen.
Tony, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get yourself going here.
Well, I'll do my best to speak a little loud enough so everybody can hear me. Because normally, if I speak loudly, well, I generally don't speak loudly, and I would normally need a mic. So I'll do my best. I would like everybody to take a little trip with me for a second. Okay? I don't know if any of you remember growing up, if you've ever woken up one morning before mommy or daddy ever came and woke you up, before the sun actually came out. You didn't wake up because of an alarm clock. You just woke up. And when you did wake up, you were like really refreshed. You were just alive. And you had a sense of happiness, like, man, like you're ready to just take on the world. That is a feeling what I call of being alive. Further down in your life, let's say maybe high school, you see so many things, you really start getting into really what you call life. And maybe a lot of you have even encountered the situation of where there was a girl who decided that she was not going to conform to what everybody else was conforming to because she had her own set of values. And some guy decided one day to give her a name, a derogatory name. And it stuck with her for a while at the school. But she kept on going. She kept going through classes, just enjoying life. But come to find out later on in life, when you actually meet this girl, she's the nicest person you ever could have encountered. But the stigma stayed with her for a while until somehow it was dispelled by whatever means. A lot of people have a lot of misconceptions of what freethinkers are about. And picture this, right now in life, the average child is told to do what they're told to do by their parents. And they don't question their parents, they just do it. That's their boss, so to speak. Then a lot of people always ask as well, who are the parents' boss? Well, we as adults right now, we can choose to or choose not to have a boss. Here's the thing. Going back to the girl in high school. Everybody has, I'm sure a lot of people here have heard about the Scarlet Letter. Okay, that's what she was pretty much walking around with. Well, a lot of freethinkers have somewhat of a Scarlet Letter, but it's probably from a lack of understanding. And with freethinkers, we are not set by any type of religious dogmas. That's all there is to it. If you are told in life what to do all the time, you may deem it to be right. You may deem it to be necessary. But have anybody in their lifetime ever thought about what really is right or wrong? Or if there's more to life than what is it that they've been told? It's almost a thing of like, a lot of people in life right now, they go through life in steps. When they're teenagers, of course, there's their little rebellion stage against parents. You want to be free, you want to be your own individual. When you're a child, you follow directions explicitly. When you become an adult, you decide that, you know something, I'm on my own now. I have to be me, I have to make my life for what it is. End up getting a family, the whole 9 yards. And a lot of people are just content with, kind of like quote unquote what I call the status quo. They go through life, they're okay with it, everything is kind of laid out for them. There are others, however, who always ask themselves, is there more? Is what I've been told what it truly is? And there's some people who just want to go out and just really find and seek information for themselves. And they do not allow other people or other things dictate to them how is it that things are supposed to be done. Now, it's not to say that these people do not have their own set of morals, or that they do not, or that they go out there and do what is it that they please. Because we in society have certain standards that we have to abide by. But a lot of people who are called freethinkers, again, do not have a set of standards that are associated with any type of religious dogmas. And so, excuse me, because of that, I've heard many stories of, many derogatory stories about them. And I guess one thing to realize or to understand is, everybody is an individual. Let's say, like, for example, your typical scientist, all right? Or, excuse me, I'll use a dentist, actually, okay? All dentists are there to work on teeth. However, they all have their little touches, the little ways of doing things. You can't precisely say one is right and one is wrong, because the end result is still the same. Whether it's orthodontist where they want to do surgery on your teeth, or just a simple cleaning. And so we need to take a look in life generally at not just simply what somebody believes, but what are they about. And so to stigmatize people because of they think differently or they have different views is not precisely always fair. So, excuse me. We freethinkers, again, we have the basic core of what is it that we think. Everything else is free game, so to speak. And what I mean by that is this. I've heard many people say that, well, you believe in evolution, or you believe in this, and this is your mindset. That's not precisely true. Is evolution a fact? Is it a scientific theory? Yes, it is. But it doesn't mean everybody believes in it, regardless of what they think about any type of religious dogmas. And so I want to touch a little bit on evolution for a second. Even though people have said it's phony, they try to dispel it. Let's think about this for a second here. Let's go back only about maybe 200 years ago. We didn't have cars. We didn't have airplanes. There are a lot of things that we did not have. Our minds have evolved to where they are today. We are intellectually stronger than we were 200 years ago. And so, even though that's not a big form of evolution, what I would call a big form of evolution, it's still a change. And that's what it's about. So, again, going back to, I'm sorry if I seem like I'm jumping around a little bit, but I just want to kind of touch on a few things here and there. So with freethinkers, there are, again, the conceptions out there. Here's the one thing we need to realize. If we all thought the same, we would never advance in life, ever. It took somebody so many years ago to say, you know something, I believe that we can do a different mode of travel besides horses. Now look what we have. And who knows down the future, I mean, we got planes as well, but who knows down the future. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people grew up and they've seen the cartoon, The Jetsons. Who knows if we'll be there one day? It'd be great, it'd be pretty neat. But the thing is, it takes somebody of a different mindset to advance that way, or to help start the advancement. If we are always bound by what is it that we're told, or what we're told to believe, then we're going to just simply follow a set of rules always, and not precisely question them. I'm sure there are many of you here who've been in the military, and as I was as well. When I was in the military, when I first got in, I followed orders. That was it. I had my own mind, yes I did. But bottom line, when I went to the doors, I followed orders. It's that simple. And it's not until I achieved rank that the table started turning, that I was given orders. In the same aspect, the way I followed orders, I expected my troops to do the same thing when I gave them. But was I thinking for myself precisely? Depending on what the situation was. If we were in a war zone, my thoughts were not for really mine. I did not follow my own set of mind, my own set of values. I just simply did what I was told to. Freethinkers are different. We don't precisely follow rules. Now, when I say that, don't get me wrong. We do follow rules of life. But following rules of what people have told us that we need to believe, we do a lot more thinking than that. It comes down to critical thinking. If somebody tells you right now, if I were to even turn around and say, I can get from one side of this building, jump over, and land on the other side, most people would probably think I'm crazy. Or turn around and say, let me see it. In other words, where's your proof? I'd like to see this. But it doesn't always happen that way with everybody. A lot of people do turn around and just follow the crowd. So that is a big difference in the critical thinking. And I'm not going to say it precisely pertains to everybody, but it is a difference in the critical thinking of those who are free thinkers and those who are not. And if we can remove the scarlet letter, so to speak, from the free thinkers, and in general, and free thinkers encompasses a lot of subgroups. You may have atheists, agnostic, humanists, what have you. But if we can remove the scarlet letter from the free thinkers and just see people for who they are, I believe our society would be a lot better off. Because we actually do have things to offer each other of value. And it's both directions. We have people who are believers, and they have a lot to offer. we do not precisely go by the thing of this is what you think. I cannot associate with it. We should never do that in life. And so, if I would love to open the floor for a few minutes. And I'm sorry I had to kind of truncate this a little bit.
As a free thinker, do you perceive that you are looked at as wearing a scarlet letter? Do you feel that in a lot of your interaction with people? Do you?
Yes and no. No, let me explain.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people. I mean, not precisely me, but I've seen it where people have stated things that were pretty off the wall. Like, here's what you think, here's what you believe, and more times than not, I believe I do kind of sit back and just listen because I find it pretty interesting to see what people think out there. And so, yes, there is a stigma out there associated with free thinkers. And again, like I said, when I say free thinkers, I'm not talking about just one subgroup. I'm talking about all. Anybody, bottom line, who just is not associated with a religious dogma. Yes, I do see that quite often, where there's a stigma attached to it. Did I answer your question?
How do you think that's different than people who have different religious beliefs treating each other or respecting each other? Find a difference.
That's a good question. It's really not that much different, actually. I've seen people from different faiths, one turn around and say, "You're wrong," or not just you're wrong, because everyone has their. A lot of people have their own beliefs and their own opinions, which is fine. But what I've seen a lot is not just people saying that you're wrong, but people discriminating against those who are not of the same mindset as they are. And it still goes along the same lines. It's still a form of separation. And that is not. Here's the thing. We have to live cooperatively together. And what we have to do is recognize that, like, for example, my actions have impact on other people, the same way that other people's actions have an impact on me. So again, if we're going to live cooperatively together, we need to recognize the consequences of those actions. And that is where we need to gel.
I was listening to you, and you tended to put the free thinker in relationship to religion. Dogma, religious dogma, you mentioned that phrase several times. Do free thinkers acknowledge, and I think they do, the need for structure within a civilization? In short, we need to be able to think, quote, outside the box if we wish to improve ourselves as a civilization or as an individual, which the free thinkers would approve of. Do the free thinkers allow for structure? You said that when you were in the Army, you took the orders and then you gave the orders, which is a typical service. I don't know which service it was.
Oh, Air Force.
Air Force.
You said
well,
military.
What's that?
You said military, not army.
All right, well, military, in the military, it's the same in all the services.
Oh, yeah.
Do you acknowledge the need for structure within a civilization? Or is that against the free thinking?
No. I would not say it's against free thinkers. There's a certain way that we're going to act in society. I cannot just go around, I need a hat, and I see some guy walking down the street and say, "Hey, look, I need one," and pull off his head and take it and keep walking.
Yes, but that's very free thinking.
Well,
Might not agree with you, but...
well, here's the thing, right? To me, there's a difference. You may look at it as free thinking. I look at it as stealing. And so it doesn't make a difference of what religious or non-religious dogma somebody has. If somebody is going to steal something, they're going to do something wrong. It's not about that type of thought process. It's just simply about what is it more so that I do or don't believe. There's got to be structure, of course, in society, or else there'd be too much chaos. So there's no way in the world that we would continue operating efficiently the way we do right now, if there was that type
Well,
of mindset.
you touched on something that was religious in nature, thou shalt not steal.
Okay.
We all know where that came from, well, I would suspect. Yeah, but the point being is that thou shalt not steal is a pretty effective dogma for getting along. I mean, I would think any society that allows free stealing, if you will, is not going to survive for very long.
Correct.
So I was just commenting on the structure around us that gives us a civilization. Structure is minute as we eat with knives and forks. That is a structure of our civilization. It is not so in other civilizations. Yet those other civilizations also have structures that are very binding on them. A free thinker in this society and in this civilization is going to survive very well because it's allowed and it's even encouraged in many ways to break out from the and come up with a new way of transportation or something, as you mentioned. I was just wondering if free thinking as a concept acknowledged the fact that in some places structure is needed and required for us to survive together as individual human beings, because I can guarantee you that if I suddenly, if we all decided that we were going to steal everything everybody else had in this group, we wouldn't be this group for very long.
Somehow, free thinking and iconoclastic behavior fit together.
It's a very big word for an engineer.
For using big words, you are in trouble.
That's the West Pointer.
You have a basis. You folks who call yourself free thinkers have a basis for your activities and for the way you think. There is a discipline there. Okay, it's a discipline of the mind. There is an understanding that there are basic rules of civilization. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be questioned, which is certainly your prerogative and you're right. But you still follow a basic set of rules. Some people would say they were the 10 Commandments, X the first and second thing, which acknowledges a God. Okay, if you take that out of there, you says thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, etc., etc. Or murder is correct. But there is nothing in life that's worth doing, as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't have a framework to it. Otherwise, what you have is chaos. And I have seen and been associated, unfortunately, with some people who think in a chaotic manner. They're not Da Vinci, they're not Galileo, they're not Copernicus. These iconoclasts of the past were free thinkers. They were way out of the box. The sun is the center of the universe? My God, are you insane? We'll burn you at the stake. Okay? But they prevailed. And they prevailed because they were disciplined, and their discipline took the test. In other words, you can have somebody who's free thinking, and that person can say, man, I'm a guy, I can have any girl I want, and they can't do anything about it. You can't exercise that. You may not exercise that. In fact, in my universe, you will not exercise that. Yet that could be considered free thinking. So I think, and I think you started, you indicated that you've got to have a baseline, and the baseline has to be ethical, moral, etc., in the context of the society that you live. Now the Spartans, you could murder somebody, and if you didn't get caught, that was it. Didn't matter. You could perform other types of mayhem. But the fact of the matter is that Sparta doesn't exist anymore. And it didn't exist for very long. It was a warrior race, and it was literally anything goes type thing. So they became civilized, so to say. They became a standard of civilization for a brief period of time, and then they're gone. I mean, you can't just, what I'm trying to say is you can't just talk to free thinking without having a baseline. You gotta have a baseline.
If I can address what he was saying. He said, "Thou shalt not steal," as if that were the original time that ever came up.
No.
In fact, the Code of Hammurabi predates it,
Absolutely.
and we've had enforced atheism in certain countries, like Soviet Russia, where they still had a rule about stealing, but they had no "Thou shalt not steal."
But it's part of the baseline, is what I'm saying.
That baseline stems from a social contract wherever you have more than one person. If you are on an island like the movie Castaway, most morality disappears if you are completely by yourself. But once you have to interact with other people, most morality stems from what he would understand as the golden rule. Treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where our baseline normally starts.
That's a baseline.
Yes.
You're a civilized man, and you have a baseline that includes not stealing, not murdering, etc. So I think we free thinkers are in agreement here.
And it kind of goes along with what I said earlier about, if we're going to live cooperatively, if we are going to live cooperatively together, then we need to recognize the impact of our actions. Because, again, and I used stealing of the hat. I just use that as an example, of course. But again, we cannot have, of course, chaos by doing what is it that we just think, hey, I want to do it. Now, regardless of what someone's thought on, when it comes to a high power or not, that sometimes has no bearing as to the actions of an individual. There are people who will do things in the name of what they believe in. And there are people who maybe do or don't believe in something. They'll still act in a way that society would deem not right. Exactly inappropriate. So again, like I said, free thinking is not really a thing of I can do whatever I want to. It's not like that.
Well, you wouldn't endorse Charles Manson
Absolutely
as
not.
an example. Okay.
He was a free thinker.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah, he was a free thinker.
In a sense, but he had no
Outside the
baseline.
box.
His baseline was himself.
Right, but well, okay. Let me ask you a question, okay? And something, actually, I just thought something that happens quite often. The child goes to the dentist, right? Dentist, they had a little pain associated with the dental work they had done. All of a sudden, the child becomes scared of dentists. But can we fairly say that all dentists will cause the same pain? No, we can't. We cannot generalize the actions of any individual and say, this is what the whole does. That's unfair, And so, there are people, and let's switch it up, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's look at religious, okay? You've seen, and I'm gonna take 9/11, everybody, and I hope this is not going to hit too many nerves here. Let's take a look at 9/11 for a second, all right? There was some radical who went into the Twin Towers. Now, would it be fair to say that all Muslims are terrorists and all of them will blow up cars, or, we can't say that. Because if you were to look at the religion itself, most people, not the religion, but the people within the religion, a lot of them are very peaceful people and very kind. You just got some of them who just really take things to the extreme and do these acts that are uncivilized. But it still would not be fair to turn around and say every single one of them are like that. That's not fair.
But then you could come up and say, why is it necessary for them to have such severe rules, as an example? The honor killings and stuff like that, which are condoned. That's not radicalism. That's something that is part and parcel of their baseline. Now, free thinking, the way I look at it, free thinking has a discipline at its base, all right? And the discipline at its base, it has to do with the rules of civilization. And the way I see it, I'm free thinking now, is that those are embodied for the most part in the Ten Commandments. All right? Again, take God out of it. People don't want to believe in God, that's fine. I saw a poster that has very badly affected me, and it affected me because it's shaken me, okay? It says, sadistic creator, useless savior. And we know exactly what that's pointing at. On the other hand, who is to say what sadism is? Who is to say what is useful and what is not useful? So, I think it's great for a person to sit down, somebody with a very definite baseline, and to sit down and jump out of that box and explore all the different things, because then you come up with the fact that this isn't right, this isn't good, this is self-defeating, any of a number of things. I would agree with you, but you're also focusing on religion, and there's civil contact, which is another thing. Good point. If there's one man, you don't need rules. If there's two people, you need rules. You just cut down the freedom of one individual. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go crazy.
One of the things you talk about free thinkers wearing scarlet letters, well, the story, the Scarlet Letter, was a very religious-based story, and it only came about because of the Puritans. But the idea of no religion in your baseline, Tony, is pretty much where I think free thinking starts. In other words, no one should believe in God a certain way. They can believe in God or not believe in God in many ways. And in this civilization, this society within the civilization, because I think the civilization encompasses the entire world, whereas the American society tends to highlight religion. It tends to, I hate to use the word glorify religion, I think overly much. I am not certain that the founding fathers of this country, of this civilization, or of this society, while they were religious men, they certainly did not think that religion should be the be-all and end-all, which unfortunately the society now may, parts of it, put religion in that, at the top of the pyramid. So I guess I can see with free thinking as an agnostic or atheistic way of looking at life, which is okay. As far as I am concerned, you have that right. But that, I think, is a cause of some of your scarlet lettering, if you feel that you've been scarlet lettered.
I use the scarlet. I use the scarlet letter as an example.
I know, and I am too.
For a
I'm
stigma.
saying it's a religious-based example,
Right.
and Tony has been saying take the first 2 commandments out of the 10, and you would have a very effective means of getting along. I used to always say, if I were marooned in the desert and I had one book that I could take with me for survival, I would take the book of Leviticus. Because the book of Leviticus from the Old Testament contains the 615 dietary laws that the ancient Hebrews put together. The only reason they put it together is so they wouldn't die of food poisoning. It's the Pure Food and Drug Act of the 4,000 years ago. It's very effective. Worked. The only reason it works is because they said, God said it was so. So the elders of that group of people, however large or small they were, couldn't make it work on their own word. They had to use some vague higher power. And what I hear you saying is that that vague higher power is not so important, but the ability of a man's mind to make something better is what's important. Would you agree with that?
Pretty much, yes.
This comes from a very liberally minded Jew.
Because, I mean, here's the thing.
I'd move Lloyd.
I'm going to use the example that I did about being in the military again, right? There were certain rules that we had to follow. And that was more of an assertion of authority versus people thinking, okay, well, here's the way we got to move the mission forward. And so that's just simply following orders. Well, anybody can do that. But when one turns around and says, okay, how am I going to make this better? Put everything else aside and say, how am I going to make this situation better and work towards that goal? You're not bound by any type of authority. You're bound by what your imagination pretty much is going to come up with to make the situation better. And so that is, to me, a distinction that I see. You know, there's, again, the assertion of authority of where here are the rules that I want you to follow versus here's what I'm going to make this situation better. Forget about what I've been told. How can I make life better, not just for me, but for others as well?
All right, so you go and you take action along the lines you just suggested. You're going to make things better. Do you acknowledge that you have some responsibility to keep things from being worse as a result of that? In other words, if I'm going to take a brand new action and see if it works, you know, should I, under the Freethinker, do I have any responsibility to see that that action doesn't hurt the existing people? In other words, if I want to take an action that I think will help this group, this club, but in the course of it, somebody might be hurt, and I can't think of an action right off the top of my head that would fit. But is there any responsibility as a freethinker to keep an eye out to the windward, if you will, to make sure that I'm not hurting the group that I'm trying to help?
What?
I would say that most of what free thinking groups do is pick up the slack from groups who don't do that. The responsibility that we see in ourselves is there, but most of what we do in reaction to other groups is because they are hurting people with following out orders that are dogmatic and not realizing that there are reasons why they should not do that.
Well, I can think of several large movements in this society that I feel they firmly believe that they are helping the overall group, yet they are hurting people along the way. Being Jewish, I've been on the hurting side more than once, but I will not tell you that I think that many groups think they're going to help the world, help the society as a whole, and yet while doing so, trample on some part of that society.
Well,
Quote, is necessary to the greater good.
awesome. Have you ever heard the saying, how do you eat an elephant?
One mouse at a time.
Exactly, one bite at a time.
Well,
Exactly.
that too.
So here's the thing. It starts from what we do and what we do with our immediate surroundings, what we have control over. Then it can start growing to larger scale. But
Most large movements of today started small.
yes, I agree. I do know that. But the thing is, every step of the way you have to evaluate your actions and see who are they going to affect and how are they going to affect them. If you don't do that, then that's when things are going to start to go astray.
But free thinking has to be situational. example of the military and not having latitude in the military, depending on what echelon you are. You're in. Imagine looking at this from the point of the ground pounder, and I can do that somewhat, infantry training and all that stuff. The point of the ground pounder, his area of operation is about that far. Well, it'd be a little farther because people are taller than I am. Is that far away. The rest is chaos, but it's outside of his camp, his ability to affect. All right? So he's either shooting somebody, or he's beating somebody with a mace, or he's cutting his head off.
You used maces?
Sure. As you go up in the ranks, though, more order is to be seen, because if you're the platoon leader, you're looking and you're seeing your men, and you are seeing the pattern that you set out in their indoctrination. And as you get higher, if you're the division commander, you see large bodies of men moving here, here, and there. In a sense, when you talk about free thinking, it sounds to me like you're poo-pooing stuff like that. Okay? Now, you have the experience there. I made a connection here with a ground war, starting with what do you call it? Chaos, and moving up, and that chaos actually has order. You know, you have the cavalry coming in on the right flank, and you have a holding on the left flank, as an example, or you're behind the enemy and you're going to crush him, stuff like that. So it's a perspective type of a thing as well. But there always has to be something at base. There always has to be something upon which you can build. And it's something that he said. One person, no problem. Two people, you got a problem. Three people, that's a three-body problem. As a scientist by education, a three-body problem is insoluble. You cannot solve it exactly. Put 4 people in there, put 30 million, put 300 million in there, and you've got a problem. If you don't have a baseline, you have chaos, and that at any level. But thank you for making me think about that.
Well, yeah, and I want to thank you also. We don't often get to these kinds of philosophical discussions around this group.
I was going to ask.
Because he's brand new. We're going to run him away.
He wants his membership application
Sitting over there saying,
Don't worry.
Here we are, the brand new member, and here we are talking.
And don't worry, all of us have got Motrins in our pockets for after this particular. It makes most of our heads ache. It makes most of our heads
We don't
ache.
want to insult our guests. I mean, I'm the only one who's managed to run a free thinker out of this room, which happened once many, many years ago. I got into a side conversation with the speaker, and he got so mad at me, he got up and left.
That was 5 minutes into the meeting.
why?
Gee, I think I've been very gentlemanly.
I've had the same feeling.
He literally left.
Literally.
I submit that this is thought-provoking. I submit that this is very useful, especially in the now, especially when I'm not standing in front of my television right now, looking at somebody whom I loathe and screaming at the television because this person doesn't know what the hell he's
Wait a minute, Rachel Maddow is on
Alright, we're taking the meeting away from you. Did you get a chance to order some breakfast, for God's
No,
sake?
I died. I was up like after this
He
morning.
can't do it for God's sake. He can do it for himself.
His stomach's sake. Did he order some breakfast?
See how that
We
flowed
try
right
to treat
out-
our guests.
Flowed right over your lips.
All right, man. I have
How do you disseminate your philosophy to the outside world? I mean, you could have your meetings and you're all free thinkers within your meeting, but how does the rest of the world know your philosophies, you know, that you're trying to reach?
I have a speaker board.
Speaker, are you a national organization or made up of small groups? How do you impact good
philosophy?
question.
Well, actions is the way you're going to impact people. If I turn around and I say, if I was to turn around and say, I'm a good Samaritan and I do things all right, and somebody's seeing me down the street robbing banks and things of that nature, I'm not going to have an impact at all. So my thinking has to, of course, correspond with my actions. The way we get kind of like the word out there, so to speak, I guess, is just number one, everyday interaction with other people. A lot of people, and I'm guilty for it as well. In my age, I probably have on certain topics. I probably have a certain mindset, and sometimes it takes. I mean, my son is a great example of this. I've had a mindset about certain things a certain way already. And my son came up to me a few times and said, "Well, Dad, have you ever thought about A, B, and C?" And I was like, "Oh, wow. I never really thought of it that way." And so I can't be too rigid in my way of thinking to not be able to change. And so from daily interaction with people, and then from, having a meeting like this once in a while, it's not a thing. Let me make one thing straight. It's not a thing of changing people's minds, not at all. But just a thing of maybe getting people to think. If you fold your t-shirts a certain way, and people in the military probably know what I'm talking about. If you're in the military and you were used to folding your t-shirts a certain way all the time, and you do it, I tell you right now, I still fold my t-shirts the way when I was in the military. And somebody comes along to me and tells me, "Why don't you do it this way a little bit because it's going to save a little bit more space," and I actually do it. That helps. But again, it takes small interaction with a small group of people around you, and then it just progresses forward from there.
Do you have any basic tenets that you always hold on to that don't change?
Talking about me personally, or?
No, I'm talking about the movement.
Okay. Well,
First would be the methodologies that we use to discern what truth is. And then second would probably be that rights, especially civil rights, are universal, and we shouldn't be encroaching on other people's rights while we're fighting for our own. That's something that when we look at our responsibility when we're changing things, when we think we're changing them for the better, we always look at, are we going to do something to another group that we're angry that they've been doing to us for a very long time? You don't stop hate by bringing more hate into the world. So, yeah, and we know this from experience.
But you don't deny hate, and you don't. And if you're free thinking, there are certain things that I would think that you would hate, or like you would hate subjugation of the mind. You would hate to have slavery. Those things are things that are worth your hate. Are they not?
Yeah, true. And one of those circular things, bigotry against bigotry. We really don't like bigotry, but basically, when somebody defends their actions that we think are completely wrong with dogma, many times they say, "Well, you're being intolerant of our beliefs." Well, if your beliefs are bigoted, we're going to be intolerant of them.
I submit that the act of being is bigoted because it's a perceptive thing. It's something that comes out of your eyes, out of your feelings, out of your brain, out of your heart, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's, you can't fight bigotry with bigotry. On the other hand, you can't deny bigotry. Everybody has their.
And you mentioned slavery. It took freethinkers to get away from things like biblical teachings, which do not teach against slavery. And in fact, the Bible was used to justify slavery, including teachings to slaves in our national history.
That's a great point. Makes my point about the useless savior thing, because it wasn't useless. It was hope that was provided by this savior in his doctrine, in his belief system that he passed on to other people.
I would submit that you guys, and this is not really a question, I would submit that the Freethinkers, not necessarily you personally, are pretty much the yeast in the bread of society. In other words, something needs to make that bread rise. Yeast is the ingredient that does that. The human animal as a species got to the top of the food chain in this planet by free thinking, by thinking that maybe it's easier to dominate the other predators with the use of spears and so forth and so forth. And if we lose the idea, the human animal is much more comfortable with the idea of being able to think outside the box. Human animal has been thinking outside the box for thousands of years. We need to continue to think outside the box, but not denying nor throwing away those positive things that that thinking has brought to us, like the destruction of slavery, like the destruction, well, we can't get rid of bigotry for some reason, but maybe that's an inherent emotion within the human animal, and we would have to breed it out of the animal. And I don't know that if we could, which I doubt, if we did, would we have a better animal? I'm not sure we would. It may be necessary. Believe me, I am way in over my head. But I think the whole concept of what you're saying is to encourage thinking outside the box. And I think that's needed within the society. Of course, when you get to be my age, you don't want to think too much at all, much less outside.
Gentlemen, I hate to cut this short.
Thanks for coming.
Really
Thank you. I did warn you, I hope.
Appreciate your
What we did.
presentation again.
We'll have to remember not to.
And I don't want to stigmatize your world, you know. You want to try to do some good things for the world, you know. Think about Sertoma as a positive force.
Wait a minute. Joiners and Freethinkers don't really go together.
We would allow you to think freely.
Appreciate both of them very, very much.
We might need a little yeast in this group, you know what I'm saying?
I
We don't have